Welcome to the AI Lab Unfiltered podcast, where we take a deep dive into everything AI. I am Drew Veach from BizStream, and I am joined with Pete Tarrin from New Wave.
That's me.
And I just wanted to also point out that we are in Studio Jefferson, beautiful Studio Jefferson, right outside Grand Rapids here, right on the edge. And we are powered by Think Tank Thought Leadership. If you are looking to do a podcast and you need a turnkey solution, they are the people. They are beautiful at keeping us on track, on schedule, and just handling all of our production, all of our distribution. They have
Social
been wonderful.
posts.
Yeah. They handle everything for us, and we love them.
We don't have to lift a finger. They're awesome.
Yeah, big time. In today's episode, we learned where and when to use specific AI tool sets and applications and where it's appropriate. We also learned where the value is between value and complexity of using AI, and how you can start using AI in your business and personally. Stay tuned. Today we have an awesome guest. I'm really excited about this one because I have talked to this gentleman several times, and I finally said, we were just talking about this a couple minutes ago, that I had to get you on this show. I'd like to welcome Andy Bass, the founder of Innovati AI and NetNerd Ventures.
Thanks.
Welcome to our show.
Great to be here. Great to be here.
So tell me a little bit about Innovati AI.
So this is an initiative really that is focused on bringing AI education to West Michigan. And it's focused on really foundational knowledge, first and foremost. Organizations, especially small to medium-sized business, nonprofits, government, education, they don't necessarily know where to begin with AI. And we know that they either need to make that conscious choice of investing in it, or they're going to get left behind. And so we also know that big enterprises, they've got innovation groups, they've got people focused on AI, they're thinking about it for their products and services. But the small to medium-sized business and smaller organizations, they're just busy executing day to day. They're trying to get their product or service to market, they're selling, they're trying to just make all that go. And so they're not necessarily thinking about AI. They don't have the resources for it. And that was one of the primary kind of motivators of the Innovate AI initiative, was to create that foundational knowledge and understanding, with the broader vision being that if we have all of these different organizations throughout West Michigan that are focused on AI, think about what that would do to creating an AI innovation hub in West Michigan.
Yep.
And that ability for organizations to take it to the next level regionally. And so that's the vision. And so to facilitate that, we're putting together workshops throughout the summer. So we have a workshop coming up on June 19th at the Next Center in Holland about, is your organization ready for AI? Right. There's one of the challenges that we have with this tool set specifically is there's fear and trepidation, because organizations, they don't understand it. Employees are scared that it's going to take my job.
Yep.
Right? So there's a lot of challenge around that. So first and foremost, understanding organizationally and culturally within your company or organization, what does this mean, right? Are you ready for something like this? And what does it mean to get ready for something like this? And then in July, we're going to be offering a workshop, and these are free, around building a roadmap. So assuming your organization is ready, well, what does it mean to go from nothing to something? Yeah. And what do you have to know? So we've got these free workshops we're doing. We're also starting a 10-week cohort in October 1st, again, at the Next Center in Holland, for organizational leaders to participate. Because we believe that this needs to be both a top-down and bottom-up approach, right?
Yes.
The ability for AI to be accepted and implemented throughout an organization has to come from leadership. They have to buy into that. But we also recognize that the grassroots effort also exists. We need to be able to support those folks that are coming into this with that fear and trepidation, and what does it mean for them to potentially be disrupted or see AI change the way they do their job on a day-to-day basis. right? And so those are some of the primary focuses of what we're doing with Innovate AI. And we're partnering with Lakeshore Advantage in Holland. We're partnering with the Community Foundation in Holland. We're kind of broadening our reach to Grand Rapids as well. We want organizations throughout West Michigan to have that level of awareness and understanding, which I think is great about what you guys are doing with this podcast. Is that same thing. You're creating awareness and education around the tools and capabilities of what this technology means.
Exactly.
I think about AI kind of the where we were with the internet in 1995. It's super early days. And I tend to be a bit of a futurist, and I love thinking about, well, what does this mean 20 years from now?
Yeah.
Right. What do we have to be thinking about today to ensure success and societal adoption of these technologies appropriately for the future, right? And I think that's part of what we have to be focused on as well, is what does it mean for future generations?
So are you, some of the people that you're talking to and really some of the audience that you want, that you're hoping to grasp at these events, is it people that are driven by the fear? Is it the adopters that are going, yes, I'm all in? Is it a mix of both? What are you seeing out there a lot of? Because you mentioned that some people have this fear of it. I got to imagine there's the balance on the other side, like us, where we're like, sweet,
right.
when is this? We're going to be there. How do I sign up?
Right. Yeah. I think it is a mix. I think we're going to see the kind of that traditional adoption curve. We're going to see the early adopters, like those of us in the room,
right,
that are willing to, sit down, that recognize the potential and recognize where this is going to go, and be willing to figure it out. I think the one thing we can all say is AI is moving so quickly. No one knows everything, right?
Right.
Kind of like all technology. No one knows everything. So we're kind of focused on what's the main thing for right now, right? I like to say the main thing is keeping the main thing the main thing. Yep. And it's understanding what your main thing is right now. And it is about kind of that education and awareness for organizations. That's going to change over time, right? Because as an organization understands what the capability is, then they have to figure out, well, what do I do with this? Where does it go? And so I think we're going to see the early adopters initially, which makes sense. We're going to see the laggards off into the future. But again, they're going to be making that specific choice to say, I'm not going to deal with this today. And what that means for my organization is I'm going to get left behind. And I'm making that conscious choice that I'm going to let this go for now. I'm focusing on something else. My main thing is something else. And that's okay, but my contention is you have to be aware you're making that decision. And so that's where I think organizations are in different phases of AI adoption, right? Every organization has probably done something with AI, meaning that there's probably someone somewhere that's played with ChatGPT. Maybe not for their company, but just for themselves personally. Mm-hmm. So there's that base level awareness of, I've heard of this thing called ChatGPT, and I've probably played with it to maybe format an email or create something, kind of silly. But they're not thinking about it strategically, and they're not thinking about it organizationally. And that's where I believe we need to put that focus.
So first of all, I think you and I are going to be great friends, because everything that you've said since you sat down here is everything that we've been saying. So we're in lockstep there, which is awesome. So for these workshops that you have coming up, for someone that's listening, either side of the spectrum that Drew was talking about earlier, what could they expect from attending this workshop? June 19th is the next one you said coming
June
up?
19th is the next one. And again, that one is focused on just kind of, is your company ready, right? Kind of assessing where you're at. And really in kind of two different areas. There's where are you at organizationally and where are you at personally? Mm-hmm. Because those things might be a little bit different.
Yep.
And so one of the things that I'm doing in preparation for that, and this kind of goes into the cohort later as well, is an assessment process. And so one of the things that I've done, and I've listen to some of your other guests talk about vibe coding, and I'm doing that too, just as, kind of everyone's getting into that.
Yep.
And I'm coming at it as a software engineer and coming at it from a very technical place. And I just posted on my TikTok account earlier today, just around kind of how my setup has changed over the last month or so. So I started with, doing things with Lovable and doing things with Bolt and using some of the tools, but then I've kind of evolved into doing more of a software engineering play. And I've been using these tools to build an assessment tool, a full assessment tool for AI that is flexible in that you can design, whatever questions you want and answers, and it does a full analysis of your organization and kind of where you're at as a person, and just using a vibe coded app, right, to do that. And so the assessment part is important, right, to understand first of all where you're at, but then talking really about kind of cultural change, right? What does it mean for organizations who fear change? And if your organization is one that it kind of steps back and is risk averse and it isn't really interested in trying new things, it's talking about, well, how do you kind of slowly look at changing that? What are some strategies around trying to provide a mechanism for companies to think about it? And a lot of that, it all boils down to fundamental business stuff, right? It's showing value. So how can you take this technology, right, which is at a high level, it's no different than any other technology that's come in the past, right? It's just different.
Exactly.
There's fear and trepidation around it, just as there has been for technologies of the past. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, there has to be value delivered internally and to customers, ultimately, right? So that's where it's showing people how you can get started with something very simple, which could be vibe coding. It could be, simple uses of automated workflows. It could be just basic prompting techniques, right? Here's what a good prompt looks like. Here's how you construct and you have to think about how you interact with these large language models. It's understanding the right tool for the job, right? No different than what's come before, right? And so that's as we think about transformational change within organizations, it's those same themes that have come up in the past. We're continuing that conversation, but now we're focusing on AI.
That's really cool. I can see why you asked him to join.
100%. I'm like, you're speaking the language we are, man.
Yeah, seriously.
How are you? Because I know you consult with a lot of businesses, a lot of organizations, and talk to people about AI. How are you illustrating that ROI to them? Mm-hmm. What gets you to that point to get them to go, oh, that makes sense? Because a lot of business owners are going to go, I want to replace people, or I have this process that I think AI can use. And we're always, at our company, questioning, is it AI for the sake of AI, or is it actually because AI is the tool that will help you in this process? It's not the end all be all. So let's not overthink it and overbuild it to, we've got AI in there, but it didn't need it. How are you showing that ROI to those clients to get them to buy in?
So part of it is starting with a basic assessment, right? So there's understanding, again, it goes back to what's your appetite for technology in general, then what's your appetite for AI and what is your company culture and so forth. It's looking at a particular, oftentimes they'll bring those challenges, right? Here's an issue that we're having, right? We're trying to save money, we're trying to build better product, we're trying to do X, Y, or Z. Mm-hmm. And so it's about identifying what is a simple use case, because you don't want complexity when you're starting with this kind of thing. You want to start with a very simple use case that has demonstrable value to it. And oftentimes, the perspective of that organization or the group within that organization, right? They're gonna have the best understanding of the value side of it. Of this is where we think we can do the best. Now, bring me some ideas. We'll take a look at those and say, okay, this one, here's an idea about automating a process, for example. Maybe it's just simple kind of sales process. We're looking to identify potential sales opportunities. Great. And we've got, right now we have a very manual cold calling process that we go through, right? We're just trying to do some lead gen. Well, what does that look like? And at a very high level, lead gen is a very similar process, but when you get into the weeds with an organization and what they're doing and the way they do business, it's going to be a little bit different. So understanding kind of that high level process and then being able to design a simple workflow using whatever tool, right? N8N, Make, Zapier, whatever the tool is, and they may have a particular tool, again, that they might already be using. So it's kind of understanding their tool sets and what their infrastructure looks like. And then it's laying out, well, here's what this looks like at a very simple level to automate this process, to make this process easier. And a lot of it is about integration. So it's looking at, great, you use Google Apps as an example. Cool, I can integrate a Google Sheet to pull some, save some data out. I can use a large language model to do some research and populate that information in. I can use a lot of third-party APIs now to be able to go out and scrape data or do specific API research and provide just simple lead opportunities, right? And that's a very easy example for people to kind of get their head around. I think that's the other piece of it is it needs to be understandable, right? It needs to be something that someone can look at. And that oftentimes when I'm talking about AI with folks, you show them something, right?
Yeah.
They see it and then they're like, the light bulb goes on and they're like, I get it now. I understand why this is important and why this is going to be transformational for my company or for me as a person, right? I think what's interesting is we're seeing AI being integrated more and more into our lives. In some cases, we don't know it. We don't think about it. Think about, fraud detection for your credit card. All that's happening with AI, real time. And, my ability now when I'm traveling overseas, I don't have to call my credit card company anymore and say where I'm going.
Yeah.
Because the AI is doing all of this detection and it knows me and it knows my spending patterns and it knows how I use my card. So it's only going to flag me when there's, a real problem, regardless of where I am in the world. And people don't think about that, right? That's just something that's happening in the background that is AI driven. And that's going to happen more and more and more. We're going to see in the future, I think, a lot of front end process. It's going to all be AI. You're not going to get to a person until sometime later in a process, whether it's medical, legal, insurance, financial services. I mean, all this stuff is going to be AI driven at the front end and at the back end too, in some cases, right? And so I think that that's part of what we have to be thinking about when we're talking to organizations and sharing a vision of the future. An organization understands where they're at today. Like I said before, they're executing. They're trying to get their product or service to market, and they're not focused on necessarily a future strategy with AI. My contention is they need to be, right? They need to be thinking about these things because they're going to get left behind, like I said. But they need to understand what is it, where is the value for them in their organization? And can we start with an example that's very simple that brings them to that light bulb moment of, yeah, I get this. I'm in on this. And that's where I think we start changing the minds, right? The early adopters, great. Like us, hey, we're into it. Well, we understand there's value and we're going to figure it out. For those that are a little bit further down on the adoption curve, we need to facilitate those light bulb moments to get them excited about what this means for their company.
I think a lot of that is what you said earlier is showing them something, just showing them this simple stuff of how ChatGPT works, how Lovable works. I love Lovable, which our viewers know because I talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
Just showing them how fast that is, because then you're right, that light bulb moment where it's like, oh, that's what it does. Oh, wow, that's a lot quicker than what I expected, or a lot better result than what I expected. And then you can just see people really start taking off and really illustrating here's where the value comes in and not here's where the complexity comes in.
Right.
It's really taking the complex and making it more valuable to you because it's distilling it down or it's doing some sort of certain function to it. When you are talking with people, how do you, like if I flip the script, what scenarios are you running into where AI is not appropriate, even though that exists,
Yeah, I think that's a good question because, like you were saying before, it's understanding, where is the right application and what are we doing for technology's sake, because as an engineer, I can look at something and be like, oh, it'd be really cool if we could do this, this, and this with AI. And sometimes I have to kind of pull myself back and temper my excitement about that because it's like, well, here's, it isn't really needed in this particular area. So simple example would be something like e-commerce, right? Online shopping. I could facilitate a really cool AI process around facilitating online shopping. And there's incremental value there potentially. And you look at what Amazon's doing as an example. They're integrating, AI searching and so forth into their experience. Do I need that? Right? I've been able to type in a search bar what I wanted for a long time. Do I need to rebuild an entire e-commerce system to integrate AI into it? And what is that incremental level of value? In some cases, maybe it's significant, right? For the most part, I would argue that it's probably not, at least today.
Right.
Now, again, fast forward, what does it look like? I think that ultimately everyone's going to do that, right? Everyone's going to rebuild everything. We're already seeing AI being integrated into every single platform, regardless of value, right?
Yeah.
In some cases, it's the marketing ploy. Hey, we've got AI too, right? So it's not as impactful necessarily, but in some cases, it makes a lot of sense. But I think there are definitely going to be those that it's going to happen, but the value today is minimal. I think a lot of organizations, again, thinking about where do you start to make it simple. A great example is a RAG-enabled chatbot. So that ability to say, hey, I want to have something on my website where people can ask questions of my service, and an LLM is driving that, but it's using my materials, my database of information, whether it's a database of products where I'm doing product lookups or status queries or whatever, or it's just pure information around my products and services. That's a great simple example, and that's an example I'll use quite often with organizations to get them understanding what it means for AI to be a practical example on your website. Now, again, there are some examples where organizations are like, oh, I use Zendesk. I've got a Zendesk thing that I can chat with people, and maybe I don't need that. Okay, that's fine. It's you don't necessarily have the same natural language processing and that kind of thing, but it's a way for organizations to kind of dip their toe in a little bit, right? And then I think as you expose them to things like Lovable as an example, and it seems like every week there's a new Lovable coming out.
I know.
In various forms, whether it's for design or for coding or whatever it is. Then you kind of see their wheels spinning a bit, right? Oh, I don't need a software engineer to build this thing that I want. I can just. So that democratization of software development and software engineering, I think, is going to be very significant for organizations as they understand that. So that's another example of engaging, kind of getting that light bulb to go on. It's like, oh, I can type out what I want, and in a matter of seconds, it's there.
Yeah.
Now, is it enterprise ready? Is it scalable? Is it secure? Not necessarily, right? I think we're going to get there, right? Lovable is going to get to the point where I can create an entire enterprise application with everything I need, and just by a product person prompting, right? You don't need a software engineer at all for design, development, testing, deployment, infrastructure. It's all going to be handled for you. Now that might be a few years away, but we're seeing where that's going to go, right? And so I think that's going to fundamentally change what the technical workforce is going to look like in an organization. It's not that engineers are going to go away completely, but I think it's going to shift what it means to be an engineer in some ways.
Exactly. Yeah. And we've talked about that before, that you're any business, you change with the times, you change with what tool set is there and what skill set is needed. I mean, even before AI came out, that's always been in existence that we had to do that. I think it's just amplified now that we're seeing how fast these tools can adapt, how powerful these tools are getting.
Right.
And you're right. And I'm coming from a development, website development agency, is that Lovable is getting more and more powerful. And that's just one tool set that's out there. But it seems like every week they're having a new release that does something extra now. Now it does this granular editing. Now it does more design. Now it does more something, functionality on the back end. But that doesn't mean our company's going to go out of business in 2 years. We're clearly going to shift along with it. We're actually embracing it more so than what you would think, going, cool, how can we use this to our advantage of helping speed up all our delivery on it? And how do we get our developers not to just write code from scratch, but now we've got AI, we got Copilot we can use to write the mundane stuff that we've always had to rewrite over and over.
Right.
We can write it, proof it, copy paste it in, and move on to the next thing, and it just radically speeds up that process.
Right. Yeah. What's interesting is that I've seen my vibe coding process change. Right. So going directly from Lovable, now essentially what I'm doing is I'm using Cursor. I'm running Claude Code in Cursor with the latest Claude Code models. I'm running MCPs in Claude Code that are allowing me to interact with a variety of other tools, whether it's GitHub or Figma or you know files on my file system or what have you. And then what I can do is I can use I can create a PRD, right, to define what I want. And again, there's Chat PRD as an example that you can use to create these things.
What's a PRD?
So it's a product requirements document.
Okay.
And so it's a software term that you're really designing kind of very detailed descriptions of what you want your software product to do. And it's down to things like, what am I naming my database columns? What type of data am I storing in this column? That kind of thing. So it's a super detailed. I mean, they could be 50 pages in length with with diagrams and all this stuff. The tools now, and this is a way you can improve your Lovable work. You can create a PRD, and you can send that to Lovable. And Lovable or Bolt or Cursor, any of these can use that. Break that PRD down into very specific tasks and execute each task one after the next.
Got it.
And that includes the development side of it, but also any testing, right? So it's going to automatically create unit tests for you. It's automatically going to run this entire soup to nuts process. Now, is it perfect? No, right? And that's where you still need to have, especially if you're doing a very large application, you still need to have a level of understanding and expertise there to kind of help you through. But like I said, it's going to get to that point where it's, hey, you are for sure going to be able to do all of this yourself if you're not a technical person. And I think that's going to change the industry. That's going to change the software industry, and that's going to change every other industry out there.
Yep.
And you get it,
it's going to go back to your custom tools for whatever you need.
Yeah.
By person, by company, by department.
Right. Even if they're throwaway, right? Hey, I need something quick that I can code up in a matter of 10 minutes for this one thing, and I'm never going to use it again.
Exactly.
And that's totally cool, right? If you had that in 10 years ago, okay, I got to spin up a team, and it's going to cost me,
How many tens of thousands is that going to be?
Right, exactly.
Hundreds of thousands. Yeah.
When I think about kind of the evolution of where software has come from, especially being able to build SaaS apps, it's kind of mind blowing to me thinking about back in the late 90s, early 2000s, where, hey, we had to build a data center, right? We had to facilitate, we had to set up servers, we had to do all this stuff to support an app. And today, great, Lovable, I can just click it, say deploy it, and all of that infrastructure, all of that process is just handled for me.
Yeah.
And even if I want to do it myself, great, I can spin up an AWS instance or an Azure instance in a matter of a few minutes if I want greater control over it. But there's nowhere near the investment that I had to make in the past, whether it's for infrastructure or for people and software development and process. It all just happens now, and that's today, right? One of my favorite sayings is, AI is the very worst today that it's ever going to be.
And I feel like he's our missing third brother.
We say that all the time. Like today AI, because people are like, well, it only does this much. Just wait till tomorrow. That'll happen. Right. That'll work for you.
Exactly. And that's one of the, it's scary in some respects.
Yeah.
But it's so exhilarating in other respects. Yeah. And seeing where it's going to go. Exactly. And so that excitement that I have, I want everyone in West Michigan to share that excitement. I want everyone to be able to say, yeah, I'm bought into this. I understand what the risks are, right? I understand what the challenges are, and yet I'm still bought into it, right?
Yeah.
I get that there's privacy issues, for sure. I get that there's security issues, absolutely. You have to deal with IP. You have to deal with all of these different things to make AI work within your organization.
Right.
Again, it's no different than any other technology. If I'm an enterprise, if I'm a company and I'm implementing some new technology, my IT department better be thinking about all the same things that right. When I had to implement an ERP system, I had to think about all those things, right? I've got to do the same for AI. I've got to think about those same things. It's different, right? Yet it's very much the same.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the message to organizations is, yeah, you have to understand it. It's new and it's different, and it's going to bring a lot of new capabilities to you. It's going to create tremendous efficiency in your day-to-day process. But you got to understand it, right? You got to treat it like any other technology and use it appropriately at the end of the day, right?
Exactly. And I tell individuals that too. It's don't dismiss it because it didn't work the one prompt that you put in the first time you've ever used it.
Right.
And they go, oh, well, it didn't do the thing I wanted to. So, it just doesn't work.
It just happened. The episode we recorded before this, Drew had his Lovable, we're sharing on the screen here, and he entered a prompt, hit enter, and we're waiting for magic to happen, and nothing happened.
Yeah, it bombed.
it bombed out. And my first reaction was, let's edit that out. But then I thought, wait, no, let's leave it in because I want people to see real life. This, to your point earlier, this is still super early on. The fact that we can do that is amazing. Yeah, it failed, but it's not. It hasn't been around for 5 years. It's been around for 5 months or or a year or whatever it is. Lovable's been around, but it's just crazy.
It gets you 80% of the way there.
Yeah,
like that, like so quickly, and that 80% is getting more and more powerful.
Right.
The last 20% is going to take more time than it does that initial. But I mean, literally, we did it in one prompt in 5 minutes, and I built a website.
Right.
The initial, and then you have to start again. Then you're into that 20% where you're really getting into the kind of the nitty gritty and making sure the functionality and the buttons all work. But Jesus, that's 80% just went so really quick.
Right. It's one of those things. I read something the other day where someone was like, the first 98% is a breeze. It's the last 2%, right? Which is, that's pretty standard. It's, you're always going to have that last smaller percentage is going to be the biggest challenge.
Yeah.
And so and that that's going to get better and better and better. And people, I think the other thing is people have to manage their expectations, right? And that's one of the things that as collectively as AI advocates, we have to manage people's expectations around what it really can do today, what it's really good at, and where it needs improvement.
Yeah.
And we can talk about the fact that great, you can one shot an application and you're going to get it mostly there, and you're going to do some iterations, and it's going to be basically functional, but it's not ready to build, the next Salesforce.
Right. Not yet.
Can it build a CRM today? Absolutely, it can. Right. One of the things that I've vibe coded is it's a cohort learning management system, and so this is for the Innovate AI project. Part of it was I wanted to be able to have a practical example of showing what a larger application looks like that was completely vibe coded. And that's what this is. So it basically allows you to manage courses and students and instructors, and then I built an entire AI generated course content curriculum system using N8N that does research, and it pulls everything together. So it's not just for AI use, right? It could be used for any educational purpose, but it was completely vibe coded. Now it took me a long time, right? And iterations. Comparatively, if I was to do that again with a team, and I'm doing it by myself as opposed to a team of developers, and I'm wearing all the hats, right? I'm designing, I'm coding, I'm testing, I'm all that stuff, and I'm doing it in a matter of weeks as opposed to months or years for a similar type of application. Again, going back to what it used to look like,
right.
and if I was doing this in traditional mechanism, it would be vastly different than what we see today. So it's the future is here to some extent, right? But we have to manage that expectation of, hey, it isn't perfect. Right. It's going to take some work. It's going to take some thought around, what does it mean for security and privacy and all of that kind of thing? What model do I have to use at the right time? What's the right tool for the job? Kind of goes back to that. So all of that kind of plays into where we're at today, but what does it look like tomorrow?
Yep.
Right. Let me ask you that. What do you think it looks like tomorrow? Like, where do you see this going? And you're pretty optimistic and understand a lot about this anyway. So I know it's like the world is your oyster type of thing, but where do you see the biggest wow factor coming up?
I think there are probably a bunch of answers to that, right? I think that, so if you look at agent technology, right, I think that, and we've heard 2025 is the year of the agent. Well, okay, it's a year and there's agents, but it doesn't mean it's the year of the agent. But what we're seeing, I think, is we're seeing kind of the seeds being sown around these new technologies slowly making their way into organizations. And I think that ability to outsource mundane tasks, right? That's going to continue, right? We're going to see that ability for AI to take all of these mundane tasks, which could be, reality is that could be someone's job, right? And we have to be realistic about that. Is AI, if you look at what AI can do, it can replace people today.
Yeah.
Right. And that's just reality. Now, does it mean it's going to replace everybody's job? No. People are going to change, right? What's the way they do their job is going to change. It doesn't mean they're going to get replaced. So I think that's one kind of reality. I think that so AI is going to take over these mundane tasks. They're going to be the agents. We're going to have our own agent. Right. What's going to happen is both personally and professionally, we are going to have our own agent that's working on our behalf. It's managing schedules, it's managing travel, it's doing, it's figuring out what we're going to have for dinner. We're going to outsource a lot of our lives to an AI agent, right? One or more of them. That's gonna start happening more and more and more over the next couple of years and into the future. So I think that's one piece of it. I think that we're going to, one of the things I've talked about in the past is we're going to see a renaissance of creativity. Right now, we're seeing kind of the pendulum swing towards AI being quote unquote creative. Musically, right? You've got music that it can generate. It can generate beautiful images. It can generate, film quality video, all of this stuff. And I think we're gonna see the pendulum shift back the other way to this kind of arts and crafts movement 2.0, where there is tremendous value put on someone's ability to use their hands and craft something whether it's music or art or anything, right? AI might be a tool, might be part of it. Doesn't mean that we're going to let AI do everything, which is a lot of what we're seeing today, right? We're seeing, and that's part of the learning and experimentation process. It's like,
right.
oh, I want to, create this image of something for my newsletter, or I need a background image for my website, or whatever. That's going to continue to happen, and AI is a tool for that to make that happen. And again, that's shifting from maybe I needed a designer and there was a specialized person that did this in my organization, right? Now I don't necessarily need that person to do that function, right? Doesn't mean that they go away, but it means that they might be focused on higher value kinds of activities. So I think that's part of it. It's shifting of activities to higher value for people. It's leveraging AI agents. It's leveraging the human for creativity, and I think that the biggest challenge that we have today, that we need to prep for the future, is critical thinking. We need to be understanding the fact that today there's fear and trepidation around AI. It's not understood. There's the fear around job. It's going to take jobs, or it's gonna. We've got the Skynet example, right? Terminator and so forth.
Oh yeah.
Now, I think that we need to be able to critically look at what is coming out of AI today, what we're putting in, what we're taking out, and are we training ourselves for the future appropriately to not lose that skill?
That's what you're teeing it up to. What I wanted to ask you was critical thinking. We talk about this all the time, and I go both ways. I literally had this discussion with my wife this morning, my poor wife, who listens to me every morning talk about AI, and then she pushes me out the door. Is AI replacing our critical thinking? Is it? Because I keep going back to the example of, well, how many phone numbers do you still remember? Because you don't need to. Again, going to your point where you just kind of move on to higher value items that haven't been replaced by technology yet. Mm-hmm. But is it taking our critical thinking? The whole wearable idea, I was telling you, I want to get the Limitless. I really want to get that. And this is the discussion I had with my wife, was if I had that on and I had meetings and discussions with clients, the one hand I say, oh, I can pay attention and focus more on what we're talking about in that moment.
Right.
But it's capturing all those notes. Am I going to commit it to memory more, or is it going to be, oh, I've got a database, I can always go back and reference it, I don't need to commit that to memory?
Mm-hmm. I don't even remember my wife's name. It's in love with it.
Well, exactly. It's like
it comes up on my phone when she calls me.
I couldn't even tell you what my son's cell phone number is, because it's a preset on my phone, and it's like I'm not going to commit it to memory anymore. So is it I have to then review after the meeting of some really good notes now and try and commit that to memory as part of the plan using automation.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like you're taking the diet drug, but you still have to diet and exercise on top of it. Yeah. You can't just rely on the drug. So is the same with this. Do I just solely rely on the AI, or do I incorporate a next step too, where, okay, now I have better notes that I can reviewing those notes, committing it to memory after that meeting to go, okay, now I've absorbed it.
Yeah. So my thoughts on that, I think, are so a couple of things. One is so I have a Limitless,
nice,
and I also have a.
Do you like it?
I also have a Plod. So I have two different recording devices. They're interesting. I haven't used it as much as I thought that I would. Partially, I think it is a perception thing around, okay, if I'm wearing this and then I'm like, hey, everyone, just so you know, I'm recording everything that's going on here. Right. So, and the thing that I thought was kind of funny was when you activate it, it actually, your phone app that it pairs with, it actually walks you through a script of how you introduce the fact that you are wearing one of these things.
Wow.
Smart.
Hey, everyone, I'm wearing this Limitless device. It's going to allow me to pay more attention to our conversation,
Right.
and all of those things. So that what you talked about, that's what it's prompting you with about how to present this. I think that, so again, that's a today problem. Fast forward, I think everyone's going to have a device that can do that, right? My phone can already record conversations. Right. So recording conversations isn't necessarily a new thing, but that ability to capture what's said, have it automatically transcribed, have it automatically summarized and sent to your email or put into whatever app you want. That's a convenient thing. I've used things like Otter.ai and Read.ai and all these different Teams and Zoom summarization tools. Those are great. Especially if I'm not in a meeting, it's like, I get a thing that this meeting happened and here's the summary of it. That's fantastic. But I think it is one of those things where it will make its way more and more and more into our everyday lives, right? It's a little kind of uncomfortable and awkward right now. It's like, I got this thing. But I think it'll get there. I think that and that's one of the things that through this Innovate AI cohort, I want to be able to provide everyone with one of those tools, right? Hey, we want to make sure that you're capturing every single thing that's going on in our conversation, whether you're talking one-on-one with someone or whether you're listening to a lecture or you're participating in a discussion. Great. Let's get you one of these devices and make sure that it's you're using it to capture all the information, because that's just going to enhance your learning of this topic ultimately. And I think it'll become more commonplace. Right now, like I was saying before, we're in this state of uncertainty around AI. We don't trust it, and so we're at the point today where we can develop those skills around critical thinking. Yeah, to make sure that 20 years from now, as we're prompting, right, because that's just going to be how we do stuff, that we're looking at what are we getting out of these tools. To me, it's like the frog in the boiling water. And it's just going to be slowly acclimated to the point where we don't pay attention to that at all.
Yep. Exactly.
And we need to, right? It's important that we don't lose that skill, not just because it's AI, but because critical thinking is important for our entire lives, regardless of the technology that we're dealing with. I mean, 20 years from now, who knows what the technology is going to be, right?
Right.
And we're gonna still need those same skills around how do we analyze what is being presented to us. Is that what we expect? Is it not what we expect? And do we challenge that or not? And we have to maintain, kind of keep those chops up. And this is a great time to develop those, because there is that kind of automatic distrust of AI right now.
I want to, it's actually for both of you. You said something earlier about tempering your excitement, because I clearly you're passionate about this and you probably annoy people in your life, just like Drew and I do. He's talking about his poor wife that hasn't listened to him talk about it. My wife's the same way. There are people that are going to be listening to this that are also probably having the same conversations with their friends and loved ones and coworkers about, we need to get into this and we need to learn about AI, but we can get annoying about it. And I see it where I work. I'll share a quick story. Just this week, I was on a Teams call with a couple people, and they've heard me talk about AI for, since November 2022 when ChatGPT 3 came out. And I was just about ready to say, and we could do it with AI. And mid-thought, I stopped myself and I changed it from AI to automation to make the sentence less offensive. Does that make sense?
Less pungent, yeah.
Yeah.
No, 100%.
Because I feel like I'm to the point now where when I say those two letters together, people are already like,
they're starting to cringe.
Talking about AI again. Do you run into that, or are you meeting, I don't want to say resistance, but are you getting the eye rolls, or is that happening to you?
I think maybe behind my back, Maybe not to my face.
Yeah.
No, I think you have to kind of read the room, right, to a degree. And so it is understanding the level, the technical level of the people that you're speaking to and with. I think it's understanding, their willingness to accept new technology or not. It goes back to kind of their, what is their history with technology and how open are they to change or to trying new things.
Yeah.
I call it living in the gray. I love to live in the gray. I'm not a black and white kind of a guy. And so I'm all about uncertainty, and I thrive in that world, which is probably why, just being successful at startups and being an entrepreneur, I think you have to be wired like that.
Yeah.
But recognizing that not everyone is, right. There are a lot of people it's black and white, and it's, either, they might be on the same page as you. They might say, man, I love this stuff. I think this is awesome. I think it's going to change the world. And there are other people that are like, get away from me.
Right.
And recognizing that you're going to run into all kinds, and how do you soften to a degree the conversation, because you don't want to necessarily turn them off, right away. So I think that's a great strategy of saying automation, or coming up with different words or different phrases that, you mean AI, but, to them, maybe it's something that's a little more palatable in the way that they might be expecting things.
Make it less of a taboo word.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, we are kind of in that world now of backlash to a degree with some of this stuff. What I kind of find funny is I'm immersed in it every day, right? As you guys are, right? You kind of, you think about what does AI mean for this or that or whatever I'm working on, or how can I use it? Because I'm in it 24/7 now.
Yeah.
And so, but I also have to recognize the fact that not everyone is.
Yeah.
And so when I'm talking with people, recognizing that maybe they're into technology, but they're not into AI, or they have no clue. And to me, that's opportunity, right? It's an opportunity to share and evangelize what this means for them, and not do it, being a jerk about it, but just, seeing if they're open to learning more, and presenting opportunities. Ultimately, they need to do something, right? Someone, you can present an opportunity to someone around, hey, I'd love to have you come to this webinar, or come to a cohort, or learn more. Ultimately, they have to make the decision to do something.
Yeah.
And you can't drag them kicking and screaming into the world of AI as much as you want
to,
right?
Yeah.
As much as you want to, and you believe with all your heart and mind that it's the best thing for them. But reality is that isn't how everyday life works. And so you have to be aware of that, and willing to figure out how you soften it, or how you present it in a different way.
Yeah. We got to wrap this up.
Damn it.
I know it. You always get warmed up, and then we got to kill it. Andy, it's been a pleasure having you out.
Thanks.
I'm so
Appreciate
glad we
it.
connected and we're able to do this, because you are speaking the language, brother.
Yeah.
You are 100% on the same page. I'm glad you're doing what you're doing and supporting that cause and that mission. We're behind you 100%.
Thanks.
Yep.
Doing the same thing on our end, trying to make it happen and get people to understand, get people to use AI.
Yeah.
Right.
Or automation. But appreciate you coming out, man. Tell people where they can find you.
Well, you can find me at my website is netnerdventures.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on TikTok as Suede AI, and Innovati.ai for the Innovate AI work that I'm doing there.
Awesome. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you coming out.
Absolutely. Thank you.
If you like what you hear on today's episode, please like and subscribe. Bye, everybody.